research shows that when you end your day in a state of gratitude, you sleep a little deeper. It says your relationships go a little deeper and a little more meaningful. That, again, that ripple effect that I'm such a big fan of. Well, they also talk about starting your day in a state of gratitude. So this idea of what are 3 things that you're grateful for when you wake up? Maybe it's family, maybe it's the weather. One of the practices in one of the journals was, what are 3 things you're looking forward to today?
Welcome back, everyone, to the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. I am your host, Randy Sparks, and today we have an amazing guest, a very special guest, the Apostle of Appreciation himself, Mr. Chester Elton. Welcome to the show.
Randy, delighted to be here. I'm so glad you called.
Well, here's the thing. Chester needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. And number one, I doubt I could embarrass you, but I am going to ask you to share a few of the other nicknames that you've got. But first, let's just talk about what Chester's done for a couple of decades. He's impacted literally millions of people in teaching leadership and vision and values to companies and publishing books. My favorite being Leading with Gratitude. Right. And this is taking gratitude into the workplace and how you can have a far more successful business and results by putting gratitude in there a little bit. So we're going to talk about that. And then recently, Chester has published, with his partner, of course, his own gratitude journal, a 90-day journal for a more fulfilling life, grateful life with a gratitude habit. So these are a couple things I'd like to talk about. But first, let's talk a little bit about where I first met Chester in person. It was at something wonderful called the Kindness Summit. In that summit, Chester gave me this little wristband. And you know what else I got right here? Yes, I love it. And you also gave me this Gratitude Rock. Look at that. Gratitude rocks, everybody. Ain't
Never
that
leave
the
home
truth?
without him.
Yep, I love it. Thank you so much for that. We met at this Gratitude Summit, this Kindness Summit. Maybe you could tell people a little bit about that. You were actually a speaker at this summit, but it was a really impactful moment and an impactful vision. And I thought maybe we could briefly tell about that experience and why that was important to you.
Yeah, really important to me, actually. Interesting. I was invited by a dear friend of mine, Curtis Bennett. Curtis and I had worked together at a previous company. He then ran a couple of nonprofits. And so we traveled to the Dominican Republic a couple of times together. I'm a huge fan of anything Curtis Bennett does. And so when he said, hey, I'm heading up this really cool nonprofit, the theme is one kind act a day, and one kind act a day can change the world. It's kind of right in my sweet spot. What do you need me to do? And he goes, well, we're doing the summit. Would you speak? And, would you donate your time? I said, Curtis, I would pay to work with you. So the foundation, as you know, is the Sumnani Family Foundation that does this. And I didn't know Khosrow Sumnani. Curtis introduced me to him. I'm on their advisory board, which is a great honor. And I didn't realize that in Khosrow's life, how much he'd already done, with the free clinics that over 400,000 people have received free medical care from his free clinic. People he put through university, paying their tuition, and on and on and on. And so as he's gotten into his I don't want to say he's bottom of the ninth, but he's maybe top of the eighth, right? Inning. He was more and more concerned about the vitriol and the division, in online discourse and bullying to, the hate speech and whatnot and stuff in universities, business, and of course, politics goes without saying. And says, what can we do to mitigate that? And so he started this one kind act a day at thepowerofkindness.org. So look it up, thepowerofkindness.org. Well, Curtis knows everybody in the Utah area. I mean, literally everybody. And so he got the president of the University of Utah to donate the space, which was beyond great. We were at the stadium there at Rice-Eccles Stadium. He brought in faith leaders from Islam. Khosrow is a very devout Muslim. Representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, and the Jewish faith. So, and you were there to see them all on the stand and with such kindness and deference to each other, finding that they had more in common than they had that differentiated them when it came to service and taking care of the poor and the needy and on and on. So, yeah, it was beyond great to see these thought leaders. One of the ones, and I don't know if this impacted you as much as it did me, was Tim Shriver and his dignity index from 1 to 8. That words matter. And there's the dignity index at the top from 5 to 8 is dignity. From 1 to 4 is contempt. Eye rolling. And anyway, that made a huge impression on me. And then Mr. Beast. Well, it wasn't actually Mr. Beast, but it was Mr. Beast's coach. The what do they call him? The influencer of the influencer. He gave me I've got. By the way, I had never heard of Mr. Beast. I'm not his demographic, but everybody from like 15 to 40 that I say, by the way, I met the Mr. Beast's best friend. They go, "Are you kidding me?" Like all of a sudden, it was like Elvis had entered the building.
Isn't that the truth? I
Yeah,
did the same when I went home to my kids and I showed them a picture of me with them, and they couldn't believe it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I know that guy." And the best part about it is how they know him is watching him do good.
good things. Yeah. So there was this just epicenter of kindness and good people doing good things. And like you, I was just honored to be there.
Yeah, well, I was so excited to finally meet you in person when we were there, and what a great place to do it. And of course, I got my gratitude rock. We got some pictures together, but then we got to be inspired. I just felt elevated, and I feel like I'm still floating on what the purpose of that summit was. And so many people on a mission to engage in one kind act a day. And to me, I think gratitude and kindness go hand in hand, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, these are ideas that we have, set a goal to be kind, one kind act a day and so on. What the one kind act a day does is it takes gratitude and it makes it actionable. And that's what I really like about it. That it's not just something you think about or something that's ethereal. When you set a goal to perform one random act of kindness every day, that's action. As you know, one of the reasons I love the gratitude stone is that the stones are all different and flawed like people. But you throw a stone in a pond and the water ripples. And that's the power of one kind act a day, the ripple effect that ripples through your workplace, your family, your community, your relationships. And somehow we've lost that, go-to benchmark of decency and kindness. And it's amazing to me. And I think that, the pandemic really shone a light on when we're isolated and we're not with people, that we can turn inwards. And that's not always the best place to spend all your time, is thinking about yourself. The other thing I love about the one kind act a day is not only do people appreciate it that receive that one kind act a day, but to your point, Randy, it sparks the kindness and gratitude in you. See what I did there with the sparks thing?
Ooh, I love it, and that's the mission we're trying to do, is change the world with the sparks of gratitude, ignite that
Yeah.
fire. Well, this is awesome. So, Chester, I love that you've been dubbed the apostle of appreciation, but
Yeah,
I
thank
also
you.
know that, and because gratitude is such a big part of your life and mission, and what you write about and teach about and coach about, could you share some of the other nicknames that people have given you?
It started in Germany. Adrian and I were doing some work with DHL in Bonn, Germany, and they dubbed us the Deacons of Danke Schön, which was kind of clever. The ministers of motivation, the high priests of praise, the gurus of gratitude, right? The one that I just tickles me is we were also dubbed the Dalai Lamas of workplace traumas, which was really fun.
That one's hilarious.
Yeah, but the Toronto Globe and Mail, Adrian and I both grew up in Canada.
Hmm.
And the Toronto Globe and Mail is Canada's largest newspaper. When they reviewed our book, The Carrot Principle, they gave us the title of Apostles of Appreciation, and that one
Yeah.
kind of stuck. That's what I put on my business card. That's my signature, the
Yeah.
Apostle of
Well, it sounds great. I've got it right here, and in the signature orange, you know,
Appreciation.
there you go. I love it. Well, could you tell a little bit, because I'm talking to you right now, but so much of the work that you're doing, it's all with your partner, Adrian. Maybe give a little shout out to him and tell people how he's important to you and to the work that you do as well.
Yeah, no, Adrian's my best friend. We've been doing this work for almost 25 years now. And when you think of businesses and relationships, most of them don't last 25 years. So I think one of the things that helps us is I live in New Jersey and he lives in Utah. So we're not on top of each other all that much. The idea to create thought leadership and write books came to me. I grew up in sales, and we had a pharmaceutical client here in New Jersey. You know, there's Zurich, Switzerland, and there's New Jersey. And between those two epicenters, every pharma company in the world has offices in one or the other or both. And we were working with a consulting company on a culture project. And part of that was they wanted a recognition system, and that's what I was selling at the time. And so we got this partnership. I said, hey, this has really worked out great. We would love to be your go-to resource for all your projects like this. How do I learn more about your company? Now, this was the very early days of the internet. And back then, you had a page on the internet, and it basically said, here's who we are, here's our logo, call this number. Right? And so he said, listen, let me send you a book that our senior VP of International wrote. And it was called The Talent Equation, something like that. You'd think I would remember it, but at any rate, he overnighted it to me. It was autographed. It had a cool little bookmark. And I thought, this is genius. So I called our CEO and I told him the story. And I said, look, his name's Kent Murdoch. And I said, Kent, no one's written the definitive book on employee recognition. And if we write that book, we become the thought leaders. We own the space because thought leaders publish. And then my life would be so much easier as a salesperson because people would call me. I wouldn't have to call them because you want to go with the best, right? And he goes, ooh, I really like that idea. Write the book. And I said, Kent, that's not what I said. What I said was, we, as in you, the company, should write the book and then I would benefit from the book. And this was this milestone, life-changing moment. He said, you know what, Chester, you're a smart guy. Figure it out. Just figure it out. Write a book. So I thought, crap. Well, as a salesperson, we had little kids at the time, you get crushing quotas, you're working like crazy. And then, on the side, I would kind of write like titles and stuff. And he called me back and he said, I've been thinking about this book. I've hired a writer and his name is Adrian Gostick. He knows how to write. You've got a great idea. Write the book. Well, a year almost to the day, we dropped a book on his desk called Managing with Carrots. That's why everything I wear is orange. And of course, our mascot, the carrot. Carrots baseball. I don't know if you can see this, but Arlington Carrot. We put this whole line of carrot baseball. I mean, you can't make it up. And I bought everything, by the way. I've got the hoodie. I've got the varsity jacket. I got the baseball caps, and I got the jersey. Anyway, we digress. And he goes, ooh, I love this. He says, it's good to be king. He says, you're CEO, you say stuff and then it happens, which I thought was really funny. And you don't know what you don't know, right, Randy? Like we thought, well, if you don't sell 1 million copies, you're a bum because that was the 7 Habits, era. Mm-hmm. I think we sold like 25,000 copies, which was a lot, but we didn't think it was a lot. Most books don't sell 3,000 to 5,000 copies. For those of you that are thinking about publishing a book, if you sell 5,000 copies, you are legit, right? Like all those Harvard Business School books, if they sell 5,000 copies, they're over the moon, right? Well, we had all these salespeople that were taking it into clients. And then Kent said, well, what's your next book? And I went, what do you mean next book? And he goes, I envision a whole library. And Adrian and I got to talking about it. We said, you know what? We could. And so we started writing. And we published, when we were working at that company, 7 books, all that had carrot in the title, by the way. And then Kent retired, leadership changed. There wasn't a good fit anymore. And so we went out on our own and formed our own company called The Culture Works, thecultureworks.com. Let me say that again, thecultureworks.com. And we've written 8 more since then. So we've published 15 books. Our latest one, self-published, The Gratitude Journal. We just did that for fun more than anything. And we've sold 6,000 copies, by the way. So in and of itself, it's a little mini hit. So we're very pleased.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you so much for listening to the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. If you like what you're listening to, will you please hit that like, subscribe to this, and tell us what you like about it in the comments. That'll help us get great guests and keep this thing going. Now back to our interview. Well, I'm excited about that. Now, first, I'm going to kind of jump to the end of that story and say, well, you published that many books, and why did it take you so long to publish your own gratitude journal, Chester Elton?
Yeah, well, it's so funny. I'm a big journaler. Here's my current journal, as you might guess. My brother sent it to me. It's orange. And I just love putting little tickets and tags. I just recently renewed my Canadian passport, so there's my old passport. So it's a bit of a journal scrapbook. And then I got into gratitude journals because of what we do, and there are lots of them out there. By the way, I mean we like ours because it's ours, but there's lots of good ones out there. And I was keeping them, and I did it for a couple of years, and then it was like that epiphany where you just go, so why don't we have our own journal? Like, aren't we the apostles of appreciation, the gurus of gratitude, So I went and took the journals that I had been using and took the pieces out of it that I liked. A friend of mine said, if you steal one idea, it's plagiarism, right? And that's a bad thing. But if you steal a whole bunch of good ideas, that's just good, solid research, right? And so we took all these good elements, quotes and how you start your day and end your day and how do you reflect on the day and so on. And we have a wonderful publisher, Amplify Publishing, that's kind of a hybrid between self-publish and a full-service publisher. And Adrian and I are part of a Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches group. And so the 100 Coaches actually is an imprint at Amplify. So we were delighted, and on the spine, you see the little 100 Coaches, icon, which is great. And we love to support our community as well as they did a fabulous job putting it together. So yeah, it took us a while to come around to it, but we're delighted that we have it. And in fact, we're looking to digitize it and to make a gratitude habit app.
Ooh,
So
I love that.
with any kind of luck,
well,
that'll be out in time for Thanksgiving.
Perfect time. On brand. You got to
Yeah.
stay on brand, Chester.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. That's funny is years ago, just as a business, I used to send out gifts to people and, Christmas gifts and so on. And I decided, why in the heck am I sending out Christmas gifts to people when my whole thing is gratitude? So I quit and I started sending out gratitude gifts at Thanksgiving because that's what's meaningful to me. And you know what it was? And I would send out something that to me meant something and expressed my gratitude to people. So, well, I'm kind of going in reverse order of the books that you've published, but now that you finally have published The Gratitude Habit, your journal first, it's beautiful, it's lovely to hold, but you stole a whole bunch of ideas. Could you talk to me about what you've learned over the years in keeping a gratitude journal, an individual gratitude practice, and then why you chose certain things to inject into this as far as the prompted practice and then periodic kind of reminders along the way?
Yeah, great question, Randy. Thank you. We're constantly looking at research, and we have now a database of over 1 million engagement surveys, countless interviews, and case studies. And the thing that always encouraged us was the common thread to all the great leaders, teams, cultures was that common thread of gratitude. So as you might guess, we'd say, well, who's been doing some research on gratitude? Berkeley did some fun stuff. Penn did some fun stuff, where they actually did some deep dives on having people start and particularly end their day with some kind of gratitude ritual. And I'm a big fan of symbols and rituals. So hence the gratitude stone, right? It's a symbol, it's a token, right? It's a reminder. My wife and I started a ritual at the end of the day. We say, what are your 3? What are 3 things you're grateful for? And, often it's more than 3. Sometimes it's tough to get to 3, but, we do this little exchange. And research shows that when you end your day in a state of gratitude, you sleep a little deeper. It says your relationships go a little deeper and a little more meaningful. That, again, that ripple effect that I'm such a big fan of. Well, they also talk about starting your day in a state of gratitude. So this idea of what are 3 things that you're grateful for when you wake up? Maybe it's family, maybe it's the weather. One of the practices in one of the journals was, what are 3 things you're looking forward to today, right? Which I really liked, which was, lunch with a friend, or like I put in today, my wife and I are going to take the train, and we live just outside New York City, and we're going to a Broadway play. I mean, how great is that? Just me and my wife, we'll enjoy, one of the great cities in the world, New York City. The place so nice, they named it twice, right? New York, New York. And I put our podcast. I'm looking forward to, connecting with Randy.
I made the gratitude journal.
You are immortalized.
I have made it.
And so that's, and then just a positive thought for the day. I'm a big fan of mantras. I read a great book by Jay Shetty called Think Like a Monk. And near the end of the book, he says, what is your mantra? And so my mantra is, when you wake up in the morning, be kind, be grateful, be of service, which is why the one kind act a day was just amazing, right? Because that's service, right? That's doing something kind, that random act of kindness, that one kind act a day. And that's how you sort of start the day. It takes you like 3 minutes to fill it out. And then on the opposite page, we've got a fun quote. There's a million great quotes. Today's quote is a fun one. It says, this is by Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton, by the way. It says, when we express gratitude, we create a positive cycle of giving and receiving that strengthens our relationships and builds trust and loyalty. Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton. So from time to time, we do quote ourselves, which is a little vain, and yet I like it. And so, and then on that, how did you end your day? So, very simple. What are three things that you're grateful for? One of the practices that I loved is, what was one lesson you learned today? That's a good one. And this, we came up, I think, on our own. I don't think this was in anybody else's journal. Was, who are the people, and name them? Heidi, Randy Sparks, Curtis Bennett, the grandkids, whoever it was. And I really like that. Now, one other thing that we added, and I will confess, it takes a little bit of work, and I'm not always good about doing it. But as we studied great leaders, interestingly enough, almost all of them journaled, or they had some kind of reflection ritual. It's a 90-day habit, right? But you don't have to do it sequentially. At the top of the page, we just write the date. So you may only do it 3 times a week, which is fine. They say 3 to 4 times a week is plenty. To get to 7 days may take you 14 days, right? The point is at the end of those 7 days of gratitude reflection, there's blank pages for you to say, hey, look back over those 7 days. And what were some of the highlights? Like, I've got well over 40 journals that I've kept. I never go back and read them, and I should. So this reflection, and then there's a 30-day reflection. And at the end of 30 days, we put a little QR code where you go to YouTube and you get a 2-minute gratitude coaching session with me, which is kind of fun. So again, it's how you start your day, how you end your day, how then you reflect on the last 7 days or the last 30 days. Just keeping that random act of kindness in the top of mind.
I love it. Two things. Well, not just two things, but I'm going to mention two things that you talked about in there that I loved. One is, who are you grateful for?
Yeah.
And calling out the people, at least to yourself. And I would imagine that just feeling the gratitude for an individual, I know how powerful that is. But it also encourages me to then, when I see that person, I feel it again. And I'm also encouraged to share that with them. And then you also mentioned the, what am I looking forward to today? So I print, little gratitude journals. I've given away thousands of them to people, and they're a little 90-day. I try to keep it as simple and quick and like, hey, just change your life with the practice of gratitude. One of the things that I put in there, other than 3 to start the day, is 3 things that'll make today awesome. First, 3 things I'm grateful for, and 3 things that will make today awesome that I have control over. And then at the end of the day, we obviously reflect on something. Something, Chester, that I've added to mine that's new, that I've been doing for the last few months. And I may have talked about this on the podcast before, I don't remember, but I have a little conversation with my future self. So after I write in my morning, I say, I'm grateful for these things. These are 3 things that'll make today awesome. And then I just have a little future self. And I have 1 or 2 sentences that's this conversation that's been going on for months with my future self. It really has changed the impact on how I love and respect and am grateful for myself and how I'm showing up. I always kind of iterate in my journal like you described over the years. I've filled out 40 of them, and it's changed over the years. That's a new addition that I've been doing in mine lately.
Oh, that's great. I was so lucky to have Marshall Goldsmith as my mentor. And he just kind of adopted me. He's got this thing. You're now officially adopted. You're my son. I said, well, okay, my parents have passed away, so they won't have issue with that. But the point is, and he's got a wonderful sense of humor, he has an exercise called the 2 letters exercise. I do this with the executives I coach, where he says, I want you to write a letter of gratitude to your past self and thank your past self for the sacrifices and the things that you did that got you where you are today. For me, it was, serving a mission for the church, for my church. And 2 years in southern Italy, by the way, that's when you know Jesus loves you, because they can send you anywhere, right? Southern Italy, not a bad gig. Learning another language, being able to work in New York City, marrying Heidi Olson. We celebrate 41 years this year, and so on and so on. The things that you did that got you where you. And then, to your point, the second letter is a letter to your future self. And what does that look like? And pick the time period, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. What are you going to do now to get to that future self? So I love that practice. It resonated with me with Marshall's, 2 letters exercise.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've done similar exercises to that, and it changes over time because I become that future self eventually. And now I can write a new letter, right? Yeah. It's just been a great practice for me. Another question for you. You talked about people, calling out people. Who are some of those people that inspire you that you're grateful for? You've kind of alluded to some of them directly by name along the way, but let's get into that.
Yeah. So, first and foremost is my wife. Heidi is my North Star, the chancellor of the exchequer. I mean, she makes everything run. She keeps us grounded, right? And I'm just so lucky to have her in my life. I'm probably more in love with her now than ever because we've got this wonderful history of kids and now grandkids and so on. So Heidi would be first and foremost. I'll tell you, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, formerly known as the Mormons. By the way, I liked being a Mormon. I get the rebrand, but Mormon was easy, right? Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It just takes so long to say it. In my later years, I really have been inspired by the life of Jesus Christ, all that he went through and how he continued to be so forgiving and so kind. And then, of course, in our faith, Joseph Smith. And the more you learn about his life and what he went through. So those are the spiritual leaders. I've become a huge fan of Buddha, just these wonderful thoughts and spirituality. And, back to the kindness summit was, in every major religion, whether it's Islam or Judaism or, Christianity, that common thread of kindness and forgiveness is always there. We've done some really interesting work in the Middle East, and so made a lot of friends that are very devout Muslims, and their practice of 5 prayers a day and the way they respect their elders. And of course, in India, with the Hindu religion and so on. All those spiritual leaders inspire me. Kent Murdoch. I was just talking to a friend earlier today. He lives in London. We'd both worked for Kent. And I was laughing. I said, we're still good friends. He's retired for years now. And I get that he lives in the Salt Lake area. When I get a chance, we grab a dinner. All the stuff I get to do is because Kent said to me, hey, you're a smart guy. Figure it out. Would have never happened. I would have never. I never had on my list, write a book.
Yeah, how great to have somebody that believes in you and challenges you and
yeah,
lets
and it's
you
so
do it.
funny. Yeah, it's so funny because I'll meet up with high school friends or go to the odd high school reunion, and they'll go, "You're a New York Times bestselling author." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I was in your English class," and that's when I introduce again Adrian Gostick. Adrian's the writer, right? We don't have anything without Adrian. I mean, and Adrian is on that list. Now, I will tell you to round out the list. I have 4 amazing older brothers, and we're all best friends, which I've come to understand is not the norm in most families. And so I'm very grateful for that. And then, of course, the cherry on top is my mom and dad. One of the great love stories of all time, Dalton and Irene. My dad was one of the happiest guys I ever met. And their love story, they were married for 65 years. And I often share this story. I never heard my father raise his voice to my mother. Not once. It's not that they didn't disagree and they didn't debate and even argue. They never fought. And that's been a great example for me. You should disagree. You should have debates and you should argue. You don't fight, because when you fight, there's a winner and there's a loser. And when you fight, you keep track and you want to even the score. You might even seek revenge, though none of those are healthy, elements to a relationship. And so my dad, plus his mantra was be kind to everybody. Everybody's having a tough day. Think about it. Be kind to everybody. Everybody's having a tough day. He treated guys at the grocery store and the guys that parked his car the same as the captains of industry. And he was a really wonderful example of a gentleman that lived and breathed kindness every day.
Wow, those type of people stand out so much. And for you to have that as your father and mother and brothers and all the others along the way, I wanted to ask you where your enthusiasm comes from, but I think you just answered it.
No question. It's funny. And my 4 older brothers were all the same. We all, worship at the altar of Dalai Elton, all his wonderful sayings and quips and quick to smile. The thing I loved about my dad is you just like to be around him. He just had that aura of goodness. I'll tell you a cute story. After church, I just was in Vancouver, where I grew up, the North Shore Ward in North Vancouver. I'll never forget, after church, this young kid comes up to my dad and says, "Excuse me, Brother Elton, could I ask a favor?" And he said, "Sure, anything." He said, "I need a ride home." He goes, "Not a problem. Meet me in the parking lot in 10 minutes and we'll give you a ride home." Well, a few minutes later, the kid comes back and he says, "Oh, Mr. Elton, I understand you live in West Vancouver. I live in North Vancouver. That's going to be out of your way. I'll find another ride." And he says, "Hold on. You see, you asked me for a favor. The fact that it's out of my way makes it a favor." And I said, "Yes." get in the car. And we all just laughed and said, that's dad, a favor is a favor because it's not convenient, right? And never hesitate.
Man, I imagine, I mean, that obviously impacted you because you remember it and you're telling me the story all these years later. But to that
Yeah.
boy, that must have stood out and made an impact for his life.
Yeah. Yeah. You hope. And that was dad, the ripple effect. You just love to be around Dalton because he was going to make you laugh. You were going to feel better about yourself. There are people you meet and you think, man, that's the most fascinating person I've ever met. And then there are other people you meet and they say, you know what? They made me feel like I was the most fascinating person they'd ever met. And the latter is better, right?
Wow. And it seems like you have inherited or adopted and intentionally continue to practice that virtue when I'm around you, when I listen to you, the enthusiasm, the kindness, and the interest that you show in who you're with. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's very kind.
I want to pivot a little bit and go to how obviously leading and living in a grateful life, keeping gratitude journals all these years, you've just learned so much about that, living with your parents and learning from them. You wrote books about how do I implement this? How do we put that in the workplace? And you and I had a conversation the other day and you said, well, yeah, people, you can't talk about gratitude with somebody and them to say, nah, I'm not into it. It's not for me. I think everybody can agree that gratitude is good, right?
Right.
However, it's not always the same when you're trying to say, well, in the workplace, people might put the brakes on where they say, well, we're here to produce a product or make sales or make money or do whatever we're doing. That's outside. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? And you lead your book, Leading with Gratitude, kind of talking about these myths of, does gratitude belong in leadership?
Yeah, it's a great point. Leading with gratitude, people look at the title and they say, yeah. Soft skills, those are good and they're nice to haves. They're not necessarily must have. Well, if, the pandemic really shone a light on the fact that people need to be valued. People need to know that, that they believe that what they did mattered, that they made a difference. And when they made a difference, it was noticed, it was celebrated, right? More than ever before because we felt that isolation, right? Whether you're a hybrid employee or remote or if you're coming in every day. So we really took a deep dive on that and said, well, let's change the dialogue. And I think Brene Brown first started this movement where she said, don't call it a soft skill, call it a power skill. It elevates it, right? Words matter. And this whole idea of making it a power skill that says, look, as we've taken a deep dive on all these brilliant leaders, the guys that do it the best, the men and women that do it the best, it doesn't diminish them. It doesn't make them soft. See, when you say soft skill, it means, well, people will take advantage of me. I'm a soft leader. No, you can be incredibly demanding. In fact, most great leaders are. They push you to be better. At the same time, they encourage you along the way. And they celebrate you along the way. So that was the real message of Leading with Gratitude. And we said, look, it's about seeing and then expressing, right? We had 8 strategies, 4 in seeing and 4 in expressing. And it was really interesting to me that when you put it in that context, asking for and then acting on input, that's a way of showing gratitude, right? Your opinion matters, your voice matters. And I'm not just going to listen to you, I'm going to do something with it, right? I love the one in Seeing where you say, walk in their shoes, do their job. One of our great clients is Texas Roadhouse. And if you haven't been to a Texas Roadhouse, set a goal and go. They have an incredible culture. And I love it because it's a roadhouse. Their employees are roadies. We all dreamed of being a rock star at some point and having our own roadies, right? This idea of everybody that is a managing partner or runs a restaurant has worked behind the bar, has swept up, has balanced the cash register, has prepared food, right? They've walked in their shoes. And when you do that, you don't make unreasonable demands. And then it just, we won't go through all 8, but then the expressing is make sure that you tailor it to the individual. Not everybody, wants a gift card to Starbucks. Some people want time off. Some people want more work. They want overtime. Know your players, right? And then the other one is understand that you can't do it too much if you do it right. Too general, it doesn't work. We say general praise has no impact. Like, hey, great job, great job. Hey, Randy, you're the best. You're the Tower of Pisa. Doesn't mean anything. Specificity. Hey, Randy, I don't know if you know this, but your podcast has really impacted hundreds of thousands of people. And the reason is because of your sincerity and you're so genuine and you bring in amazing guests. And you don't just share stuff, you give people actionable behaviors. That's what makes your podcast so great. I mean, that's so much more impactful than, hey, Randy, great show. Great show. Really? What made it great? Did you actually listen to it, or are you just saying that? It's like, how are you doing? I'm doing
Yeah,
great,
do they
great.
really want to know?
Yeah. I've often said that. People say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I go, "Do you really want to know?" And then when you say it like that, they go, "No, no,
Uh,
actually."
well, maybe in New Jersey they'd tell me no. Out
Yeah,
here, everybody tries to be nice, and
yeah, yeah. Well, we're in the tri-state area, right?
yeah.
Connecticut, New York, New Jersey's, and it's the old TV show. How you doing? How you doing? The Friends, right? There's a way to do it, and like anything, it's a discipline. It takes practice. Nobody's good at it right away. And when you start putting those in practice, they are power skills. People know you care about them. And when people know that you care about them, they're more likely to do better work, to be more loyal, to show up. And it ripples into your clients and your business. And we've got all the data that shows that when you're highly engaged and you feel like you're appreciated and valued, everything gets better. Like literally everything gets better.
So I wonder if when you teach this and to leaders, to your clients, and to implement that, who's giving you the most resistance? And why are they resisting it? When to me it just seems obvious. Or is that a small percentage of people that are kind of like, I don't know, Chester.
Yeah, yeah. So we had a good friend, Bob. Call him Bob because that's his name. He's the guru of thank you, by the way. He wrote a book, 1,000 Ways to Recognize Your Employees. His doctorate in recognition. I didn't even know you could, but he did. And he found that people that give a lot of recognition and gratitude, right, had two things in common. One is their first manager did it. When you think about your first job, like, where you had to show up every day kind of thing, that first manager had a huge impact on how then you would manage because you're like, well, they're the boss. I guess this is how you do it. The other one, which just tickled me, is they had a good relationship with their mothers.
Interesting.
Their mothers loved them, which was so great. And I think that does have a big impact. We're talking like it was my mom and dad. They modeled gratitude. I had a great first manager in Detroit, Michigan. We had so much fun at work. And he was always so grateful that we showed up and the deals we closed. And yeah, it set the tone. And then I gravitated towards those kinds of leaders. Kent Murdoch. And that's why, we want to create as many of those leaders as we can, because the people that they lead will see that. And if they want to be a leader, they'll say, well, that's what a leader looks like. That's the way a leader behaves. We had this wonderful program with American Express. We coached their high potential leaders. And it was all around, what are your rituals? What are your tokens? How are you engaging people? Do you know your players? Do you know their stories? And it was really interesting. Almost all of them got promoted. And I remember dropping him notes and saying, as your coach, I'm taking total credit for all your. And they said, and you should, they were very cute with me. Obviously, wonderfully talented people to begin with. But that idea of what were your personal relationships and what were your first business relationships have a huge impact.
I love it. It seems really clear that people have positive results from implementing these
Nice.
processes or just good values and principles. So I have a question for you. This takes it back home.
Okay.
You're an amazing coach, thought leader, well respected all over the place. Guys like me, people you never met before, reading your books and seeing you somewhere. And it's like, oh, it's the carrot guy, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but you go home and you're talking to your own kids. What's that interaction like of dad? Is it like this ever? When they're growing up or now even, dad, I just need a dad, not a coach.
That story you and I
What's
told.
the experience like?
It's so interesting. I was laughing with my wife because you're rarely a hero in your hometown, and it's so funny. I joke that I don't think anybody in like my wife or my kids have ever read a chapter in any of the books we've written, and we've written 15. Like you'd think at some point they'd go, "So what does Dad actually do?" For example, none of my kids keep a gratitude journal, which just drives me nuts, right? And I go, hey, if I gave you this journal, would you do it? And they go, yeah, probably not. Not that they're not kind. They are. They're all really good people. And, Heidi and I are very proud of that. It's kind of funny that because I'm the carrot guy, and I'll put stuff out to my family and they go, oh, you being the carrot guy again? I go, well, yeah. So I am. Just do it. Trust me, you'll love it. Is that you do have to live the brand. And my kids by the way, I have a great relationship with my kids. They get a kick out of me. And I do, I talked about this. I wear orange every day. I have orange glasses. I have orange shirts. I wear orange shirts to church. I wear orange shirts every time I present. And for me, that's part of the routine and the ritual that says, do everything you can to stay in a state of gratitude. Do everything you can to admit that. I had a really interesting experience at the Denver airport. I was flying to work with some executives, and I was talking to Adrian on the phone. We were planning something. And as we were doing it, I had this odd thought. I thought, when you're on stage, you're the carrot guy, right? Are you the carrot guy off the stage? And if people were just to bump into you randomly, what would their impression be? And so as we were talking, I was thinking this, and we were laughing and joking, and they hung up. And I'm not kidding you, Randy. Literally, like 2 or 3 minutes later, a guy comes up to me and he says, "You're Chester Elton, aren't you?" And I went, "Well, yeah. How do you know that?" He goes, "I'm one of the executives that's going to this retreat. And I looked you up, and I saw you, and I thought, I think that's him. And I asked myself, I wonder what he's like when he's not on stage." Isn't that bizarre? Isn't that bizarre? And I went, "Well, what do you think?" He goes, "You're a happy guy." Thank you. So yeah, it's not just what you say. Is it who you are? There's that crossover when we coach executives. Say, "I'll do it, but it's not who I am." I said, "Great. That's a great place to start. Do it." And then there'll be that tipping point where it's not just what you do, it's who you are. And that's what we're working towards. So keep doing it.
I love that, Chester. So maybe go into that a little bit of sometimes I hear people talk about, well, I'm trying to discover who I am. And my personal perspective on that is, no, I'm trying to create who I want to be. I'm creating that future me and choosing the attributes and values that I want, that I aspire to, and begin the practice of gratitude, begin X, Y, and Z, so that I can become that is me. And so that you're not putting on an act for me. That's Chester. Chester is that enthusiastic carrot man. And that's him. I had someone on my podcast say this the other day in jest. He said something on the lines of, "Look, I just sell this stuff. I'm not buying it."
Right.
People can be like that, but it seems like that's the question that Adrian was asking you, and that you luckily got positive confirmation from a random stranger that, no, that seems to be who you are.
It is interesting. One of the jobs I had to put myself through college was we sold books door to door. And that's when you could go to door without the fear of getting shot, right?
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. And we sold, I went to BYU. It's a church school, right? Like Notre Dame and Southern Methodist and so on. We sold Bibles. Now, they weren't Mormon Bibles. They were just Bibles, right? The Nave's Topical Bible and the Nave Study Bible, and on. And we family Bibles and so on. And I remember we were at a meeting and I did well. And one of these guys came up to me and he said, "Do you think it matters? Like if you really believe in the product?" And I went, "Well, of course it does." So why do you ask that? He goes, "Well, I've never read the Bible." I said, "Well, you should." Yeah. And by the way, you should start today because you're selling a Bible. And it's like anything, if you're selling vacuum cleaners or you're selling pharmaceuticals or you're selling, baseball caps. If you don't love baseball caps, don't sell them, And it was so funny. He says, because, I knock on doors and they see I have a Bible and they say, "I've got a Bible." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you know the average household has 5? The fact that they have a Bible, you know what that means? They're Bible buyers, man." That's a good thing. He says, "Yeah, I keep looking for people that don't have a Bible." I said, "No, the people that don't have a Bible probably are not going to buy a Bible." So, it was just so interesting to me, to your point. Do you love your product? If you love your product, you're more likely to sell more. Like the attitude of, "I just sell it, I don't buy it." I wouldn't hire that guy. I wouldn't hire that person. I want you to love what you sell.
Yeah. And how do you love it? Well, you practice it, you do it, you get in there.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. I'm so happy you're making, this is the best way to start my day, Chester. I'm so happy that you're sharing time with us and everybody that gets to listen to this.
Well, I appreciate you too. Hey, by the way, just a quick plug. One of the benefits of gratitude that we found is Adrian and I wrote a book called Anxiety at Work. Mental health, it's Mental Health Month in May. So a good time to focus on it. And we found that there were 8 practices in the workplace that helped you deal with anxiety. How do you deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with feeling like you're not part of the group and other? How do you deal with perfectionism and so on and so on? Well, the 8th practice was a gratitude ritual. And we found this with counselors, that you can't be in a state of anxiety and a state of gratitude at the same time. You can't hold 2 emotions. So find a gratitude ritual. Now, we've got a podcast like you do called Anxiety at Work. It's kind of on the nose. And the idea of that is We talk to business people, we talk to counselors, and we always ask, well, most often we ask them at the end, what are your personal practices? And it's so interesting. Well, one came up with a really interesting mantra that I love. She said, I move, I meditate, and I reflect. So get out and exercise. It was a very common practice. Go for a walk, go for a run, go work out. Meditate, quiet time, whether it's spiritual or not, right? And then that idea of reflection, which brought me right back to our journals, right? Reflect on the day. What did I learn? Who am I grateful for? How am I going to end my day? So don't just think of it as, I want to create this really positive workplace. There'll be great benefits from that. Think about, how do I manage what is like my loneliness, my mental health, my depression? Because I will tell you, gratitude is a big component of pulling you out of that loneliness and out of that negative state of mind. There's a company that I want to give a little plug to, if it's okay with you, and it's Lit Video Books. We've got paper books, we've got digital books with Kindle, and then we've got Audible, which I love, by the way. I'm a big Audible fan. Now it's video books. They took our book, Anxiety at Work, a 200-page book, and they condensed it down to a 29-minute short movie. And it's not the authors reading their books. It's animation, it's interviews, it's brilliant. And if you go to litvideobooks.com, I think they give you like 3 days free, and just experiment with it, because we always say we should read more, we should feed our minds more. It's brand new. They only have like 50 books on the platform. Take 29 minutes, look it up, Anxiety at Work, and focus on that last little bit about how gratitude can help you heal your anxiety and help you manage your mental health.
Wow, we'll put those links in this, and I am going to go check that out, and I invite everybody else to do that. Listen to Chester. The man knows what he's talking about, and how could you deny the carrot man himself? Chester, you're amazing. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for doing good, and thank you for sharing this time with us.
Hey, I appreciate being with you, Randy. Take care, my friend, and call me anytime.
You got it. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode. Until then, you're awesome.